AITAH if we don't pay for my son's rehearsal dinner because I can't stand his fiancée? Posted by you/Renallison777. Just for background, my husband and I have 3 sons, Luis, 32M, Cyril, 27M, and Jamie, 22M. Cyril has been with his girlfriend Rosa, 27F, for 5 years, and Jamie has been with his now wife Lucy, 20F, for a bit longer. We are all very close since it was just this year that my oldest 2 boys moved out. Jamie and Lucy, and their 2-year-old daughter Letty, will be living with us for a few more years since Lucy is still in school. We are absolutely fine with this. They are both helpful, sweet, and wonderful parents despite everything. Plus, they're not taking my grandbaby anywhere as long as I can help it lol. Luis started dating Jessa, 36F, about a year ago and got engaged a few weeks ago. To be perfectly honest, I'm not totally sure about her, but he seems happy and has been through a lot. I don't want to be some evil mother-in-law and have really tried getting to know her, but I think we're just very different. She's kind of conservative politically, and my husband is a US citizen but was born in Mexico, so as you can imagine, I do not support and did not vote for the current administration. Rosa, Lucy, and I have bonded in the past by going to rallies, protests, etc., and this all came up when I tried including Jessa and invited her. She declined and sent me a long text. Nothing crazy QAnon, but like we call them Reagan Republicans in my day, not that it's the same these days at all. It was still so awkward, but I've continued trying to invite her to non-political things, though I think that one invitation soured things. Other than politics, I have also found Jessa's attitude towards Jamie and especially Lucy gross. I'm not stupid, I don't think that 2 people with such a big age gap would become BFFs, but Jessa seems to go out of her way to make snide comments about Lucy when she's not there. I haven't said anything because it's her wedding and 100% her choice, but I also think it's odd that she asked Rosa to be a bridesmaid but was even saying she didn't know if they'd be inviting Lucy to the reception. She thinks she should stay home watching Letty because she won't have fun since she won't let her drink. The venue does allow people under 21, and one of her sisters is 19 and invited. Also, showing Lucy pictures of her sister that Jamie would walk down the aisle. Rosa and Lucy have both acknowledged it but haven't seemed too upset. It's still gross. Anyways, Jessa texted us earlier asking about the budget for the rehearsal dinner, and I just feel like I don't want to spend any more money on this than I have to. My husband thinks it's best to just leave it, but it feels like the principle of the matter. Plus, they're not even having a rehearsal or anything. They just want to have a dinner. My husband's stance is that it's true we help Jamie and Lucy a bit more than our other sons currently, but we paid for Cyril's college and, more expensively, Luis's rehab, 7 years sober. We are all so proud. He said not to let politics get in between family, but even if she were a true blue liberal, I wouldn't like the way she has been treating Jamie and Lucy. Ultimately, I want to continue having a close relationship with my children and their partners, but I also don't want to be walked all over, and I don't want to seem like I'm condoning bullying. Lucy's family completely abandoned her, so we're all she has left. I don't want her to feel like we don't care about her. At the same time, I know I'm biased towards them since Jamie is my baby, and I've known Lucy for so long that she's like the daughter I never had. So would I be the jerk if we don't pay for their rehearsal dinner? /relevant comments. Commenter. Why not just ask her if there's an issue with Lucy, in her opinion? And go from there. Just because Jamie is the baby and Lucy is like the daughter you never had, it definitely seems like you're playing favorites, and if it's obvious to a stranger online, then how do you think that makes the others feel? Ops response. I probably should have put this, but I've tried talking to her, and all she said was that there's too much of an age gap to include Lucy. I have called her out for mean comments, and she just rolls her eyes. I don't want to have favorites, and if I'm being honest, Luis was probably the one I was the most forgiving toward forever. Commenter 2. Can you afford it easily? You say that you've paid for rehab for your son, which is very expensive, so if your budget is tight because of that, then that's fine. But if you can afford it and just don't want it because you dislike the fiancé, that's super petty. I do think you should be taking your concerns to your son about her treatment of Lucy and Jamie. That is not acceptable. Why are you and the rest of the family not calling her out in real time when she's being snide about Lucy? If you hear it, say something. Ops response. We can afford it. Honestly, if either of them had asked us to host one, we would have. Instead, they just assumed and asked for a budget. Coupled with the other issues, it just seems so rude. I've talked to Luis. He says that they're just too far apart age-wise to get along. I said, she can still be kind to her? He said that's just how Jessa is. Both my husband, my middle son, and I have said things in real time, and Jessa has just rolled her eyes. For example, We went dress shopping for the flower girl's dress, and Jessa ended up picking one that was a few $100s. I could tell Lucy was stressed, so I offered to pay for half of it and told her she could pay me back. The full amount was due that day. Jessa made a comment like, "Oh Lucy, what will you do when you don't have the bank of op helping out?" I said, "Actually, it's not an issue because Lucy and Jamie have always paid me back on time and in full, plus, it's not her business what I do with my own money." She was nicer the rest of the day, but it didn't last. Has Op spoken with Luis about Jessa and her behaviors? I have spoken with him, my husband has, and so have his brothers. We want him to be happy and have the family he deserves and has always wanted. Luis says politics shouldn't get in the way of family. As for the bullying, Jessa has been called out, and he's more or less defended her. I get that they're different ages and that Lucy and Jamie have made mistakes, but Luis seems to think that none of her comments are that bad. The craziest thing is that throughout their lives, I've been accused of each of my 3 sons being my favorite. My husband hasn't. Jamie is his favorite, but he doesn't let it get in the way of his emotions. He's actually way harder on him than the other 2. I honestly don't have a favorite. Right now, I'm closest with Jamie and Lucy, but it hasn't always been this way. Commenter 3. It's okay to be closer to Lucy, as she lives with you and you've known her longer. That's understandable. What have you done to get to know Jessa better? Just you and Jessa stuff, besides politics. Not everyone is going to agree on politics, you'll just have to keep that separated. Maybe Jessa feels like an outsider. Only you can make whatever changes you need to in order to make things work. I, too, have 3 children and have different relationships with each of them, but I also make sure to take individual time with their significant others and together time so no one feels like the odd one out. Your post just came off as you don't like her and that's that. Then to say am I the jerk if I don't pay for it? Absolutely. Because again, that makes them feel left out. Op's response. I have tried. I've invited her to one-on-one events, non-political ones like a wine tasting or a flower show, and she's mostly fine there, but it's pretty superficial. I have tried getting to know her, though. Commenter 4. Wait. What? She wants to not invite Lucy to the reception because Lucy will need to stay home watching Letty, but Letty is a flower girl? Is Lucy just a flower girl incubating machine in Jessa's mind? Because it's pretty wild to essentially say, your kid is important enough to us to include in the wedding party, but you are so unimportant to us that we don't even want you at the party. Wow. These are some bad optics. And if her excuse is that Lucy won't have fun because she can't drink, then is she not also concerned that Luis won't have fun because he can't drink? I'm actually surprised that there is alcohol beyond wine at the tables for the toasts at the wedding of someone who is 7 years sober. What's Luis' opinion on all this? I'm getting the impression that Jessa wants a husband but doesn't overly care if it's Luis and the whole package that comes with him or not, so his opinion may not be relevant. Op's response. Luis never had an issue with alcohol. He doesn't drink, but it's not a trigger for him. But I agree the excuse is just that. She has a 19-year-old sister who is a bridesmaid and obviously invited, and she mentioned letting her drink, so it's obviously a bullying tactic. But yes, it's a child-free reception, so she thought it would work out perfectly for Lucy to bring Letty to the church, then take her home and stay there with her. I think that's rude, especially since it came up when Lucy mentioned she had asked her friend to babysit, so she was excited for a night off with everyone, since usually one of us is babysitting Letty. Then she was told she might not be invited. Was Jessa previously married? No, she has not been married before. She was engaged a few years ago but called it off. Op on Jessa's and Lucy's family backgrounds. Jessa's family did not abandon her, they are all very supportive and in contact with her. Lucy's parents cut her off when she wouldn't put my granddaughter up for adoption, she was a minor. They've been trying to come around more now, and she's having a hard time with that along with this. Jessa doesn't have those problems. Op on her and her husband's finances and how they plan to help their children. My husband and I are lucky enough to be well off after many years of hard work. I was expecting to give them between $3-5K for the rehearsal and a bit more toward their honeymoon. She already owns their house, and they want to stay there. We would expect to give Cyril and Rosa a similar amount, and we're going to base what we spend on their weddings to get an amount that we'll be giving to Jamie and Lucy when they buy their first home. Our boys were good sports when their father and I were growing the family business when they were young, and we're excited to be able to support them. I just don't want to pick favorites. Update 2 days later. Thanks for all of your advice on my last post. As I mentioned, I want to be a good mother-in-law. I remember when my boys were young and we'd watch Everybody Loves Raymond, and I'd say I would never be a Marie. I mentioned our political differences to be upfront. I know it's a bias, but it's not the main reason I dislike Jessa, just one of them. I get that I would be the jerk to not pay for their rehearsal dinner. A few of you gave me the advice to just let my kids work it out, and some of you said to talk to Luis one-on-one, so I invited him to lunch yesterday. Before that, I had texted the two of them back saying that we'd love to plan them a rehearsal dinner and to let us know if they had any ideas, and Jessa sent us a contract for a place with an $11,000 minimum. We have about $10,000 saved up for each of our kids for their wedding/first homes/honeymoons. Before you ask, we spent about $750 on Lucy and Jamie's entire wedding, much cheaper when all their friends don't drink. I didn't want him to feel like I was only taking him to lunch to talk about the wedding, so we did talk about quite a few other things before I asked him how the wedding planning was going. He kind of shrugged like you know how it is, so I asked if I could help in any way. He declined and thanked me for helping with the rehearsal dinner. I told him the cost was more than we were planning, but we are happy to do so for family. Edit, sorry to spell it out, he acknowledged that Lucy would be invited to all wedding festivities. He got kind of flustered at that and just started laying into me about how angry he was at Jamie. I told some of you, but originally Jamie was supposed to be best man. He and Luis were always so close. When Jamie first moved out of our house a few years ago, he would call Luis every single day and they'd talk forever, same thing when Luis moved out last year. I knew after a blow-up Jamie stepped down as best man, but I did not realize they were this angry with each other. I have never heard Luis talk about anyone, much less Jamie, this way. He called him a jerk and said he needs to grow up, stop being so controlling, and get over himself, and said that Jamie just didn't want to see him happy. There were other insinuations that I feel were incredibly unfair and untrue, but I let him get out his issues. I know you all think I'm so overbearing, but I had not realized their relationship had gotten so bad. I listened to his airing of grievances for a while and honestly I didn't push back much, it was so shocking. And later, when I told Jamie I had gotten lunch with Luis, he was just like, oh cool, like nothing was going on. We're just not a family that has these kinds of dramas. I told my husband I just thought I should let the boys work it out among themselves, he said we'll see. So, not a great update. I have no idea how this is supposed to play out or what I should do, if anything. The wedding is in October since they got a good deal on a cancellation. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. I personally don't understand the concept of parents paying for their kids' weddings at all unless you're extremely rich or something and can throw around thousands of dollars without blinking. If they can't afford a lavish wedding, they should have a smaller one on their own dime. My parents passed away a long time ago, and my partner's parents are retired and live tightly on their Social Security. I could never in a million years imagine asking them to pay $10,000 for our wedding. Our wedding. Emphasis on our. Ops response. I agree with you, but we are well off and want to help our kids celebrate their new lives. Commenter 2. If you save $20,000 per kid for weddings, you should only pay $10,000 toward Luis's wedding. If he and Jessa want an $11,000 rehearsal dinner, they can pay the extra. I highly recommend that you offer to just write a check to Luis for $10,000 and let him and Jessa decide how to work that into their budget. Then, do the same for all of your kids. Each one gets $10,000, not $11,000, not $12,000 plus more for the axes and gratuities, just $10,000. Ops response. We can afford it, though. And whatever we do pay is what we'll pay toward Cyril's wedding/honeymoon/home and toward Jamie's home. Commenter 3. Wait, am I mute here? They want you to pay $11,000 for a rehearsal dinner? That alone would cause me to object to their entire wedding and just disengage from the situation. Who in the hell spends that much money on a rehearsal dinner? I can't imagine what your other children are going to feel like when they find out you gave them $11,000 toward a rehearsal dinner but spend around $750 on their wedding. I would just give them a check for the same amount you spend on the other two and let them do with it what they please. Ops response. I only put the amount we paid toward Jamie's wedding because people kept asking. We plan to give them quite a bit of money when they can buy their first home to make up for how inexpensive their wedding was. Commenter 4. Sadly, it sounds like the oldest of your three sons is also the least mature of your three sons. I think you're handling this correctly by letting your sons manage their own relationships while still speaking out against unkind words and behaviors. Ops response. Maybe. Jamie has obviously matured fast since becoming a husband and a father, and I know there's some resentment between them because Jamie used to be Luis' little buddy and then had to share him with his new little family. But Luis has been through a lot that would break most people. I want them to work it out. But I mostly want my close-knit and loving family back. Commenter 5. So, did Jamie and Luis fight over the fact that Jessa doesn't want to invite Jamie's wife to their reception? If Luis did, in fact, ask Jamie to be his best man, then I think it's kinda weird that he wouldn't insist that Lucy be invited to the reception. Ops response. I don't know exactly what the fight was that made him step down. They've had a few arguments, but I thought they were mostly worked out. Lucy is invited to all wedding festivities at this point. Op explains why $10,000 was the budget offered for the wedding/honeymoon/house down payment. I mean, that was just the amount we came up with years ago. We have more than that. But we won't be paying toward private schools. We do pay for Letty's swim lessons, though. I don't know. We like helping our kids. The reason is because it's not set in stone. We decided on that number years ago, and if one of them wanted a $1,000 wedding fund but then needed $13,000 to secure a mortgage, of course we'd give it to them. I love my children, and I don't care if they're adults, I want to help them as much as I possibly can. But to that point, I informed all three that we had $10,000 allocated to their wedding/honeymoon/mortgages, and to please plan accordingly. Yes, Luis asked about Jamie's wedding, and I told him that they were informed they had $9,675 left, minus $750 for their wedding but plus the $425 for Letty's flower girl dress because I was paying for that, and Luis was lucky I didn't take it out of his $10,000. Everything else is a damned if I do, damned if I don't. I'm just so sick over my boys fighting and am worried Lucy will blame herself. Second update 1 week later. Please be kind to me. I know that I have not been a perfect mother or mother-in-law, and I know these issues aren't mine to fight, but my family is falling apart. Last weekend, my son Jamie and his wife Lucy went out of town for a concert. My husband and I stayed home and had Letty, and we had a great time, although they probably FaceTimed us every 2 hours all day Saturday. Saturday evening, Luis and Jessa invited us out to dinner. We told them we could go somewhere but would need to be home by 8 for Letty to go to bed, or they could come to our place, and we could get takeout and hang out here. I assumed they wanted to talk about the rehearsal dinner. They didn't respond until after I got home from church, and my son just texted me and said, "We were thinking somewhere nicer, never mind." Kind of odd, but whatever. Everyone got home safely, but Jessa and Luis skipped our Sunday dinner the next day. Then a few days ago, I was home with Lucy and Letty, and Luis came over with Jessa to pick up the ring. Luis has this thing with Letty where he'll walk in and say ring ring. And she'll yell hello. And then he picks her up and gives her hugs and kisses. But he came in and was just ignoring her, so she ran up with her arms out and yelled hello. And he just walked past her. He got what he needed and they left, but I was appalled. I asked Lucy if we should tell Jamie, and she just said that we probably shouldn't, but how are you going to be rude to your niece, she's also his goddaughter, just because you're mad at her dad? But that brings us to yesterday. I was out grocery shopping. Apparently, keep in mind I was not there, Luis came over to bring something to my husband, who was outside/in the garage with Jamie and Letty. Luis and Jamie got into an altercation that became physical. My husband says that Luis instigated the physical fight, but he's not sure of the rest since his only goal was to get Letty inside. When he got back outside, it seemed over and nobody was hurt, but they were still yelling at one another. My husband told Luis to leave, and when he did, he had Jamie go downstairs to cool down. I asked him what even started the fight. He said he isn't even sure, everything escalated so quickly, and I have never seen him so shaken in so long. We don't know how we're going forward, but I finally agree with you all. This is Jamie and Luis's issue to work out. I can't blame myself, and I certainly can't fix it myself. My husband and I told Luis he was no longer welcome at our home, and he lashed out at us, telling us we were taking his side. I told him, listen, you attacked your brother in front of his child, they both deserve to live somewhere they feel safe. The other thing is that Luis works for my husband, and he's well within his rights to make him do a drug test. As for the wedding, I have no idea what to do. My husband says we should just give them the money we promised them and be done with it. That breaks my heart, but it might be the only way. Jamie has told me a few times that we just need to get through the wedding and maybe things will work themselves out. I don't know if he means that, to be honest. I'm just so sick, I wish there was something I could do. I'm trying to set up some time to spend with my middle son, Cyril. I feel bad that he's in the middle of all of this too and don't want him to think I've forgotten about him. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. Quite honestly, if I had this happen in and around my home, even if it involved my adult kids, I would be having a fit and demanding to know what happened and what was going on. Time to go strict, nuclear parent on them. After all, one lives under your roof, and the other wants money off you for their wedding. Leverage it if necessary, because things are escalating, and while I want to ensure a safe environment for my minor grandchild, I wouldn't necessarily be banning one of my sons without understanding why he is being argumentative and aggressive, along with ignoring his niece. That is something I would be communicating clearly to both son I need to understand what X has done. It is unlike you to be violent, so I know you are upset, and I want to see if it's possible I can help to fix things. Or I can listen. It would be helpful for me to understand because it's important to me to support you where possible. Commenter 2. I have no idea what is going on in this post. Third update 5 days later. I have posted before, this is an update, and it will probably be my last. I apologize that it's kind of long. I am completely destroyed by all of this. I mentioned in my last post that my husband and I told Jamie he needed to tell us the truth about everything. Lucy was working, and he had put Letty to bed, so it was just the three of us. He kept skirting the subject, and I finally got so mad and told him, listen. You're living in my home and now you're physically fighting your brother. If you don't tell me what's going on, your daughter can stay here, but you and Lucy will need to find somewhere else to live if you want to keep secrets like this. He got angry and wouldn't answer me anymore. We fought a bit more, and he went to bed. I told my husband I meant it, and he was like, I don't know what else to do. Luckily, my son came to us the next morning and told us everything, from his point of view. Basically, for the 4th of July, we had fireworks in our neighborhood, so Cyril, Rosa, Luis, and Jessa came over. We still have rooms for them, and since Rosa's dog was at her parents', they all had a bit too much to drink and spent the night. Later, when my husband and I had already gone to bed and they were all hanging out, Cyril and Lucy went for a walk and smoked a joint. I'm not saying I approve of this or anything, I've never seen her high, but I've heard them make jokes because she doesn't drink but sometimes smokes. So basically, the only person who was fully sober was Luis, but he had just gotten LASIK, couldn't drive at night, and was a little out of it in general. Anyway, Jessa flipped out when she found out about the pot and started yelling at Lucy. She said she was a mandated reporter and that since Jamie had been drinking, Lucy was endangering her child by smoking weed. She brought up that kidnapped British child and just laid into her. Lucy got upset and went to bed, and Jamie argued with Jessa. He admitted it got pretty nasty from both of them. Basically, Jamie called Jessa out for her behavior towards his wife in general. Jessa told him she was just telling the truth and that it was ridiculous they called themselves married when they only got married because they had a baby and needed insurance, and would be divorced in a few years anyway. Jamie told her she was just bitter that she was still in her mid-30s and unmarried. This was low. She had an engagement that ended because her fiancé cheated on her with her friend. Jessa then went for the jugular and told him that it was embarrassing for him and Letty to even be in their wedding because it was trashy being so young with a baby, and that Letty would have been better off being adopted by a nice family who actually wanted a child. Jamie told her that if it was so embarrassing for her, his family didn't need to go to the wedding, and it wouldn't be anything off his back. He then went inside to go to bed. Luis followed him into the house and asked him not to drop out of the wedding. He said everyone was just drunk and said cruel things, and promised Jessa wasn't going to call CPS. Jamie still said he couldn't be his best man and that he didn't want his wife or daughter to ever be alone with Jessa until she apologized. That's when the whole Lucy shouldn't go to the reception so she can watch her daughter and she shouldn't spend money on things that aren't Letty's stuff started. Lucy was really scared of rocking the boat and was just going along with it. Jamie had been trying to get to her and convince her that nothing was going to happen, but she was freaked out. So of course I asked if he hadn't told us any of this because he also believed it was a problem. How often is she getting high? He just laughed and said maybe 2 or 3 times a month. He's not worried, and she certainly hasn't since the 4th. Weed is legal in our state, and I know Cyril smokes often, lol, but only if you're over 21. So Lucy has been embarrassed and especially hasn't wanted my husband and me to know any of this. I wanted to get my other son's sides, and Cyril agreed to meet my husband and me later that day. His version was the same as Jamie's, almost worse because he and Rosa stayed outside and kept arguing with Jessa. And I know you all think I forget about my middle son, but he knows that he's my drama-free king who never causes me any headaches. I asked if he thought Letty was being neglected or if Jamie or Lucy had a problem, and it was a resounding no. He told us he thought Luis and Jessa were out of their minds and just looking for drama. Apparently, after Jamie had left the fire, Jessa continued ranting about Lucy, saying she was inappropriate with Luis because in his phone, her name had an emoji by it. I can confirm this, it's a car because before Luis got his license back, the joke was that Lucy was his Uber driver. She also said she didn't want me to watch her kids if Letty was there because she thought that since her parents were teens, she'd be a bad influence on her and Luis' kids. Cyril said he and Rosa also wanted to drop out of the wedding, but Jamie begged him to stay on to avoid any more drama. Finally, he said he's tried talking to Luis as well, and as much as he blames Jessa, he feels like Luis deserves more of the blame for going along with everything. At this point, we were devastated and confronted Luis about his side. He continued to avoid the question, so I was very clear, We told him what his brother said and asked if any of it was true, because I had wanted him to get a chance to give his full story without any bias. But he refused to say anything until I relayed what Jamie and Cyril told us. He didn't deny any of it. Actually, he assumed I already knew and that Jamie had told me and asked me to withhold the money unless Lucy was invited to the wedding, which has been setting him off. I asked if he thought Letty was being neglected by Lucy or Jamie. They live in my home, and I needed to know if he truly believed we had reason to be concerned about my granddaughter's safety. He didn't answer directly and was like, "See, this is just proof that all you care about is Jamie and his kid, and Jamie needs to realize he's not perfect." So I asked him again. And he avoided the question again. My husband asked him then and there if he could pass a drug test, because he was ranting and getting flustered but not actually saying anything. He brought up some other things, including a specific, relaxed conversation that Jessa was a part of, and I still have no idea why she would be upset by it. I could tell Luis was deeply hurt by that, and I think my husband regretted it. Luis told us the only person we should be drug testing was Lucy and made us leave, but the next day he sent over a confirmation that he took a drug test at the lab we've used before, and when we received the results, he passed. Later that week, he handed in his notice. He works for my husband. He's taken a position at a competitor. My husband is devastated because it obviously means he's been talking to said competitor, as offers don't just happen out of the blue, in his opinion, but he paid out his notice, and that was his last day. During all of this, but after we'd confronted Luis, my husband and I started discussing how we would move forward. We knew at this point that the boys would need to work this out themselves. If I'm going to be honest, after getting all sides of the story, we were leaning toward being on Jamie and Lucy's side, although we acknowledged the mistakes they made, since it all seemed like a severe overreaction on Jess's part after months of rude bullying toward them. We talked about possibly speaking to them, booking therapy, anything to try to fix all of this, but on Tuesday, our decision was made for us. It was possibly the worst day of most of our lives. I was at home with Letty and Lucy, and a caseworker from Family Protective Services came to our home based on a report. We were all interviewed, and they did a walkthrough of the house. I don't know if we're going to get an official notice or anything, but the caseworker seemed nice and told us she saw nothing to move forward on but left some information about services for Lucy and Jamie. They are completely traumatized, and so am I, if I'm being honest, and have been glued to Letty ever since Tuesday, as if somebody is going to take her from them. Even Letty can tell they are sad. I've spoken with Lucy, who kept assuring me she only ever smoked on some weekends and never when Letty was awake. I told her I believed her. She kept offering to take a drug test, and even if I didn't, nobody is going to take a happy, healthy, and safe child from her parents, even if she was smoking every day, but I can tell she doesn't believe me. Jamie confronted Luis that evening, via text. He refuses to see him, and asked if it was him or Jessa. Luis told him it didn't matter, so Jamie told him he was dead to him and blocked his number. Rosa dropped out of the wedding, and Cyril is staying on as best man but won't attend the reception or give a speech. He wanted to back down completely, but Luis convinced him to stay on for the ceremony at least. I told him he should do what he thinks is best. He says he still wants to drop out but is worried it might lead to something worse. He said something, and was completely heartbroken, but was kind of like, well, you know, there's still time for them to turn against me and try to ruin my life, so we'll see how this goes. I think he's trying to protect his little brother by not pissing them off more, but I can tell how miserable he is. My husband and I are completely broken about all of this. We told Luis that while we would always love him, we could not support him or his marriage after he and or his fiancée wasted CPS resources to get revenge on his brother, and that he needed to come over and get the rest of his stuff, documents we were keeping for him, childhood stuff that wouldn't fit in his apartment, and to let us know exactly when he would be doing this because Jamie and his family were not going to be there. Maybe we shouldn't have, but we confronted him when he came over, asking him again if he truly believed that his niece was in any danger. He told me it didn't matter what he thought, we'd always defend Jamie. He said Jamie would get over it once this all blew over. I told him he very much would not be getting over this, and very likely, he would never see his brother or his niece ever again. I don't know if he didn't realize before then how serious this all was or what, but he kind of backtracked and told us to tell Jamie to call him. We told him multiple times that wouldn't happen, and he got angry and desperate before blaming us, saying that we're the reason for this mess. That we should have made Jamie figure out his own life and not babied him. I remember yelling at him that if he'd had his own way, I would still be doing his laundry and packing his lunch, and to remember that he lived here longer than Jamie has or plans to. My husband and he started fighting, and it ended with Luis telling us that he was going to start his own family and didn't need us, and blamed us for all of his problems. I was done with that and told him to get out if he was just going to say things with no examples or explanations to back them up. He didn't ask about the money, but I was ready to tell him I was saving it in case we needed a lawyer for all of his BS. I know it would be easy to blame Jessa, and it's hard not to because I can see her influence in all of this. But my son is the problem, and he, or his fiancée, with his knowledge and support, has done something so unforgivable I don't think he will ever see his brother's family again, and it will be a long time before my husband, and I want to see him. I will always love him. If I got a call tomorrow saying that he needed a kidney, a lung, bone marrow, I would go straight to the hospital to give it to him. If he needed to go back to rehab, I would go back to work and work nights to pay for it. My heart feels like it has the flu or something, because I know if he has children, I'm unlikely to know them, much less meet them. But I can't forgive him for this, and he hasn't even attempted to apologize. I've never been so sad. Top/relevant comments. Downvoted commenter. Looks like Luis feels Jamie is the golden child. Your posts also seem to suggest it. While Jessa seems obnoxious, your eldest son has stated quite clearly that you favor your youngest. So, while this incident is his fault, I somehow feel you and Dad created this situation. Ops response. Jamie simply needs us more right now. We've spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars supporting Luis to get him to a good place. His brothers didn't complain and say we were favoring him then. My middle son doesn't think we favor anyone, Luis is the only one saying it. I'm sure we could have done things better in the past and we wouldn't be here, but here we are. Commenter 2. Wow. Seems Luis feels you favor your youngest over him. As for the weed issue, in my state, even before it was legal, CPS wouldn't remove a child over that. They look at it like this: is the child well taken care of, fed, clothed, housed properly? If yes, then we have much more serious cases to deal with. A report will be filed stating a home visit was made and all is fine. Usually, it's on the parents' records for about 5 years before it's sent to long-term storage. Ops response. Yes, that seems to be what will happen. It's been hard getting answers about next steps because they keep telling them there aren't any. We've never had to deal with anything like this before. It's not like we'll need to know to prepare or anything if a caseworker comes, it's just more the constant threat of it now that is causing them dread. Commenter 3. Valp, your son just nuked his relationship with his entire family, so his fiancée achieved her goal of completely isolating him. There's no coming back from calling CPS out of spite. You can keep the door open for your son if you like, but I don't see his siblings having a relationship with him ever again. Hopefully, one day he comes to his senses. Ops response. I agree. I can't ever fully cut my son off, but his brother can, and I don't blame him. Commenter 4. I'd be telling him the door is open for him, but firmly shut for Jessa until she apologizes and gets the therapy she desperately needs. Ops response. Nobody has any intention of ever forgiving Jessa. I can only not shut the door on my son, but the hope of reconciliation between the boys is non-existent. It's almost like he died. Op on attending Luis and Jessa's wedding. We will not be attending. Cyril does not want to, but wants to avoid further drama, and Luis is putting a lot of pressure on him. He doesn't want anything worse to happen but won't be taking pictures after or going to the reception.